Hi, my name is Jennifer Matos. I'm the Executive Director of the Noah Webster House and West Hartford Historical Society, and I'm bringing you the 29th edition of our Armchair Tour of West Hartford history. I'm coming to you this week from near the corner of Trout Brook Drive and Farmington Avenue. The land over on the north side of Farmington Avenue on either side of the intersection was originally owned by the Arnold family. In fact, a man named Edwin Arnold actually developed a portion of the land where I'm standing to create the Trout Brook Ice and Feed Company in 1879. He was about 50 years old when he started this business, and prior to that he was a farmer. But he ended up starting this really successful ice and feed company. We have these great images of it. It's hard to imagine that this business ever existed here because there's no trace of it, but we'll post some pictures along with this video so that you can get an idea of what it looked like back in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Basically, what Edwin Arnold did is he put a dam on the Trout Brook to create a pond. In the height of the winter, he would bring in a team of workers to harvest the ice. They would use these really long saws, and they had these conveyor belts where they would kind of hoist the ice into a warehouse on the grounds here. They would pack the ice with sawdust to preserve it for the future. And they actually would go around and deliver the ice locally. In 1895, so about 15 years into the business, they had 10 wagons that they used for delivery. They were these red wagons that were drawn by horses, and they had a team of 40 delivery workers who would go out and make the rounds and deliver ice on a daily basis. As a consumer, you would be given a cardboard square of different sizes, and you would put it in your window if you wanted ice, and the size would let the ice worker know what size of ice block you were looking for. And of course, at this time, we're talking about a time when people had what were known as ice boxes. So pre-refrigeration, in order to keep your food cold, you needed these huge blocks of ice. They would eventually melt out onto a tray, and you would need to get new ice to replace it. So all of this is from the late 1800s, and then even going into the 1900s, still when electricity has started to come out but is not necessarily widely available or reliable, the need for ice really persisted. Now, in addition to this ice company, they also had a feed company, which means that they actually provided grain and feed for animals and livestock. And if you can imagine, at this time when they've started this company in the late 1800s, West Hartford is primarily an agricultural community, so there certainly would have been a need for this kind of business. In the 1900 U.S. Census, Edwin is listed as the head of the household with 3 of his adult children, his wife, and 2 maids, and they lived just on the other side of the intersection of Trout Brook and Farmington Avenue on the north side of the street. One of the sons was Frederick, and he was actually in business with his father. So they both are listed in the census as dealers of grain. So instead of the ice, really the grain is what gets mentioned. And then they had another brother who also helped out with the business as a teamster. So that meant that he actually drove the wagons for delivery that went out. Now, as the cities and the metropolitan areas kind of around the Hartford area become more crowded and a lot of industry kind of sets up along the river where you would have natural ice sources, what happens is pollutants get into the water, and it makes those water sources less desirable for ice. And it increases the need for ice coming from really pristine places like West Hartford. So Edwin actually passes away in 1905, and his son Frederick takes over the business. And the demand is so great that in 1912, he actually buys new property to develop some new ice ponds. So he actually buys property over off of Tunxus Road, and he dredges the land to create 2 ponds. He builds ice warehouses, and he also even puts in a link to the trolley line so that it could link from Tunxus over to Farmington Avenue, so they would be able to transport their ice really easily. And I should mention that here on the site that I'm on Farmington Avenue, there was a trolley line, so it would be really easy for them to move their ice from this location to the trolley and get it onto the trains to go wherever it was going. We know that at its height, they were actually sending off about 50 train car loads of ice per day, going as far as New York City. So there was really a great demand for ice. It was a really booming business. Now, 1912, you can imagine that at that point, we're probably getting close to the time where technology is going to change and refrigeration is going to happen. And that probably would have happened, except for that World War I started. And because of World War I, so much attention was being paid to kind of use that technology to create munitions, and then also to kind of refrigerate food for the troops going overseas. That the ice industry was really still needed. So it kind of hung on for a little bit longer. In 1929, Fred Arnold sells the company to the Southern New England Ice Company, and they actually go out of business 9 years later. So he got out just in the nick of time. But he remains a lifelong West Hartford resident. And in fact, there is an Arnold Way that is named, a street that is named after the Arnold family. So they certainly have left their imprint here. Now you'll see not even a trace of any warehouse, any kind of ice business here. You would never see it, but you can see some over where Wood Pond and Woodridge Lake is located. So that's actually the area that they had purchased off of Tunxus Road. And although it's now developed residentially, I've heard that you can actually see the foundations of the warehouses still there on site. And those ponds really were made by Trout Brook Ice and Feed Company. So a little bit of something new that you probably, I'm guessing you didn't know about West Hartford history. And right here off of a really busy area, Trout Brook and Farmington Avenue, who would have thought that they would have been harvesting ice right here? Hope you learned something new, and we'll see you next week.